The following day, Aline King, the mother of Jerome, Kathy, Lois, and Beulah, again was picking beans.
Aileen King, I saw your children yesterday at the Okeechobee camp. Why didn't you put them in the nursery?
I don't make enough to pay for it.
How much does it cost to put them in?
85 cents.
85 cents.
That's right.
Aileen, what time did you come out the field this morning?
6 o'clock.
What time would you get home?
About 3:30, 4 o'clock.
6 this morning to 4 o'clock this afternoon.
That's right.
How much did you earn?
$1.
$1?
That's right. $1.
Is that because the beans were of poor quality?
That's right.
Has this happened before?
That's right.
How much will your food cost you today?
About $2.
Aileen, how old are you?
29.
How many children do you have?
14.
How old were you when you first started working in the fields?
8.
You've been working 21 years in the fields?
That's right.
Aileen, do you ever think you'll be able to get out of this kind of work?
No, sir.
The thing that's really coming to roost, though, is sort of this fundamental issue, which kind of nobody wants to talk about, but I've started to talk about, which is it's the intersection of DEI and immigration that has really, I think, warped, our perceptions on high-skilled immigration over the last 50 years. Which and you see this, by the way, in like this, you look at like the foreign enrollment rates at the top universities, which went from, like 2 or 3 or 4% 50 years ago to whatever, 27 or 30 or 50.
And Columbia's over half, right?
70% or whatever it is. And so there's been this massive transformation in who gets educated. And then there's been this massive transformation of who gets admitted through through affirmative action, and then, as we now know it, DEI. And again, this goes straight to the political divide in the country, which is if you're a family, if you're parents of a kid where I grew up, and you've got a smart kid, and you think you're going to get them into, a top university in this country, like, you are fooling yourself. Like, there is no chance, right? Because they've got the top universities have basically an admissions program that looks like this. It's like DEI for white people, which is the donors and all the fake sports, right? And so
a lot of fake sports.
Like, I have a friend who got into Yale to play varsity croquet, which, let me just say, is not a sport that we played a lot in rural Wisconsin. And then you've got DEI generally for the other groups, and then you've got this immigration influx, and as a consequence of that, like, it is nearly impossible for somebody coming from like a Midwestern or rural background or Southern background to get into the U.S. By the way, this doesn't just affect white people. This also, obviously, we now see how it's affecting Jewish people, but it actually also affects African Americans in a very interesting way, which is actually both the universities and the corporate employers are literally, this is true, they literally import Africans so that they don't have to hire African Americans because they still count as black. There was a great story. The thing that woke me up to this, there was a story in the New York Times 20 years ago about Harvard. Harvard admits, black students, but which ones? Back when the New York Times could talk about these things honestly. And it quoted actually Henry Louis Gates and Lonnie Guinier at the time at Harvard Law School, basically observing that African Americans were not benefiting from an affirmative action because Harvard had figured out that they could import Nigerians.
What's your views on Tariq Nasheed? Because he's got this thing called Foundational Black American.
Yeah.
What is that about? Because I feel like that's pure division, if I'm not going to...
It is. But I get it. I don't agree with it, but I get it. This is what it is. There were too many black people from outside Africa, from outside America, going to America and playing the ass. And what it is African Americans spotted this and spotted that there's a consistent pattern. Black Caribbeans, black people from Africa going to America and being the ass. And what the FBA agenda is putting up a wall and saying, no, you guys can't be a part of this if you're going to be on that raccoon train.
When you say playing the ass, what? Because from what I know, a lot of Africans, a lot of Caribbeans who go there, academically, they're surpassing them. And also business-wise, they're surpassing them. So who was playing the ass?
When they then use that to say, well, that means that you African Americans are lazy. Do you see?
Yes.
And then being on some right-wing conservatism, let's throw African Americans under the bus.
That is true.
Let's pretend that Jim Crow didn't happen, redlining didn't happen, breaking up of
Yeah. But not all of them can be affected by this. There's always got to be certain people who rise above it regardless of what the situation is. It's just the natural nature thing. Weeds grow through gardens, you name it. Why do you think it is that a country like Jamaica or Africa, where they too have had their deprivations, had their colonialism, had their slavery, why do they go somewhere and tend to excel amongst people who also have gone through it?
Because you're not comparing like with like, that's why.
Okay.
A lot of us think we are comparing like with like. You're not. Let me explain. Generally speaking, Caribbeans in America, not the ones in the Caribbean, but the ones in America, will represent the top 10%.
I see.
So if you're really going to compare like with like, you have to compare the top 10% of Caribbeans with the top 10% of African Americans.
Okay.
And when you compare the two, the African Americans are slaughtering us, bro. It's not even close. It's a massacre. But what it is we compare the top 10% with your average African American. You're not comparing like with like. And if you compare your average African American, you're 51, you got 1 to 100 and Mr. number 51. Number 51 is richer by a factor of 20 than your average Jamaican. Do you see? So what happens is it's a perception thing. Now let's be clear. We can all point to people from outside America, go to America and rise. Yeah? Colin Powell did that. Kamala Davy Harris has done that, whatever. But you can't pretend that's typical. Do you see?
Yeah.
But what happens is because we live in a world where people don't really have full pictures, you can take the exception, use that to smack around African Americans' faces. This guy just got off the boat. He's doing better than you. Not realizing, but for my man to have got on the boat in the first place, he wasn't typical of the country that he was coming from. He was in the top echelons of that country. Do you see?
Yeah.
And the same is true also with people from Africa going to Black America. So if we're going to compare the top 10%, let's compare the top 10%. And when we do that, African Americans are slaughtering us.
Hello, everyone. This is the Mind of Lilith, and thank you for joining me today. I hope you're all doing well. So today I wanted to share my thoughts and opinions about the elevating hostility between ADOS FBA and the immigrant community. One of the reasons I don't post a lot on my channel is because I like to sit back and observe what's going on in the world. And when you don't do that, you can get caught up in the algorithm, chasing numbers and feeding into the interests of your audience, even if it's against your own agenda, your own beliefs, okay? It is easy to lose your center when the momentum of the algorithm is pushing you in a direction based on your narrative and based on the comments that we receive from our subscribers and our viewers. Now, this message is not only for members of the ADOS FBA and immigrant community, but I'm also speaking to the content creators, not anyone in particular. But this message is relevant to everyone or anyone who wants to see productivity and progress, not chaos and dissension. So when you're not solutions oriented, it is easy to be controlled, manipulated, or tricked into participating in behavior that is antithetical to your objectives. Over the past several days, weeks, and months, as I've been sitting back and observing this whole dynamic between ADOS, FBA, and immigrants, I've noticed a predictable and even inevitable uptick in hostility between the ADOS FBA and immigrant community. A few weeks ago, I talked about how it was important for ADOS FBA and other groups to delineate for socio-political, economic, and cultural reasons. But delineation should not be a synonym for destruction and desecration. The purpose of delineation is to preserve, protect, and conserve the cultural, philosophical, ideological, political, and even spiritual beliefs and traditions of a particular group. The ADOS FBA movement started out as a political action to fight for reparations. And several years later, because quantitative solutions have not been identified in detail, we have devolved into mudslinging ad hominems and almost like a civil war between ADOS FBA and immigrants. Saying that you want reparations is not quantitative, right? How much reparations are you owed? If you're multiracial or multi-ethnic, do you still qualify for reparations? And, on a side note, this has always bothered me about the reparations movement. And I don't think that the reparations claim is wrong. I do believe that ADOS FBA are entitled to reparations. But my question is, why would the U.S. government give ADOS FBA reparations when they were very intentional about destroying us and attacking us for centuries? Every opportunity this government had, they have effed us over. So why are we trying to appeal to their morality when they have proven that they have none? They don't care. I honestly think that the government believes that the $1.7 trillion of spending power that ADOS FBA brag about having is their reparations. You're getting reparations by being a part of the economy. That's what I think that they believe, because in their mind, they don't have to give you anything, period. That's how the government thinks. I'm not saying that you're wrong for wanting reparations, but I think the government thinks that you're already getting it in the form of $1.7 trillion in spending power, because that comes from their economy. So they're giving you the money in drips and drabs, right? Because they want to control how you use the money. But I think that in their mind, they think that's what's going on. That you have a job, right? You got a place to stay, right? You're not living in squalor, right? So this is your reparations. That's what I think they believe. So anyway, back to my message. So for those of you ADOS, FBA, or immigrants who want a civil war between these groups, you guys are stupid as hell, because neither ADOS, FBA, or immigrants control their economy. They don't control their communities. They don't control their countries. Y'all don't control shit, okay? ADOS, FBA, and immigrants are not in a position to be fighting each other within hostile territory. What is hostile territory? Any territory you do not control. That's hostile territory. All of our people in Africa, in the Caribbean, South America, in the United States, we are under siege and under control of European, Israeli, and U.S. intelligence agencies. All of these agencies are sitting back, watching, and waiting for an opportunity to capitalize on the dysfunction and chaos that's brewing between us. For the content creators in this space, please fall back and be more conscientious about the language and the energy you're putting out here about this situation. Now, I absolutely do believe that ADOS FBA should have socioeconomic sovereignty and self-sufficiency. We need our own schools, banks, businesses, hospitals, and professionals that serve the needs of our community. This is necessary. We absolutely need to do this for our survival. It is not the immigrants' fault, ADOS FBA, that after civil rights, we assimilated and integrated ourselves into helplessness and dependency on the government. Immigrants, it is not ADOS FBA fault that we are alchemists that can turn poverty, slavery, and disenfranchisement into gold. It is not our fault that we are the David that Goliath fears. It is not our fault that Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers and became a prince in a foreign land. There is jealousy and animosity on both sides, and you can guarantee that this jealousy towards each other is going to be weaponized and capitalized upon by the same intelligence agencies that killed Patrice Lumumba, Malcolm X, Dr. King, Bob Marley, Stephen Biko, etc. The intelligence agencies know that brown-skinned people like us love killing each other more than anyone else. So content creators, please be more responsible for the messaging, and tone it down because our enemies are watching and salivating at the opportunity to destroy you. Black Americans, please be careful about identifying with and aligning with a dying empire. The American empire is about to collapse after decades of theft and corruption. And ADOS FBA, you will definitely sink with the ship as you're fighting with immigrants who have somewhere else to go when this falls apart. For those of us who want to stay and fight, we will, right? We'll be here throwing down as we usually do. But if you want to leave the country, where will you go if you're attacking immigrants? What are you thinking? What are you thinking? ADOS, your power comes from the American empire. If she sinks, you will sink with it unless you have tangible plans to build instead of fighting on a floating ship. Delineation is only one phase of building. We need to pool our resources to build where we are, but we should also form coalitions with immigrants, not because we need them to survive. Please understand this, not because we need them and we're afraid of them. That's not the case. We don't really need them for that. However, if we don't form coalitions with the immigrants, the government will use these people to destroy us, just like the KKK. If they don't have a stake in what we have going on, it will be easy for the government to manipulate these people into destroying us, period. So it is in our best interest to try to partner with them, not at the expense of our own sovereignty and our own identity. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if we have them close to us, it'll be harder for the government to use them against us. At the same time, if they are close to us, it is easy for the government to use them to hurt us. It goes both ways. I'm aware of both sides of the coin. But if they're ostracized from our communities because of hostility, it will be much easier for the government to use them to F us over unless we have our own defense systems, and we don't have that. We don't have our own intelligence agencies. We don't have our own defense, anything. So if we were to ostracize the immigrants at this point and build our own stuff, what is to stop the U.S. government from using them against us out of jealousy? This happens all the time. This is basic military science, okay? So yes, we have to be very careful. We are in this predicament because we don't control anything. The $1.7 trillion in spending power that we're bragging about are the crumbs we are receiving from white-owned corporations and government contracts. We don't own factories. We don't build schools to educate our children to work for us. Now, side note, I will be discussing Umar Johnson and why I never donated to the school at some other point. But yeah, we don't have our own hospitals, banks, etc. We have plenty of ignorance and guns and drugs and violence and poverty in our community. Too much of that going on. So before we can purge the immigrants out, we got to purge that shit out first. What are we doing among each other that is destructive to our cause? The immigrants cannot be the scapegoat for what we're doing to ourselves. That's not fair and it's not productive. So I do agree we need to delineate and have our own resources. That is true. But we also have our own mess to clean up, and we cannot blame immigrants for that. We're acting like we're kings here, trying to make king moves. We're going to stop their money. But we're all pawns on the board. Listen, Black people, Black Americans, my peoples, okay? Please stop acting like you can stop the government from giving immigrants all of your jobs, because you cannot. And the Boule Blue Ribbon Black people from these Black Excellence 10% Black free organizations, they have proven for the past several decades that they were willing to sell you out for their own individual gain. They weren't focused on the collective. And that's not the immigrants' fault. Any content creator who continues to fan the flames of xenophobia without providing peaceful, practical solutions that are measurable, that serve the needs of our people, that are timely, meaning that we know when these things are going to happen, they are manipulating you either intentionally or unintentionally. Black Americans and immigrants have shared interests. And now that we have delineation out the way, which is great, that was phase one. Phase two is figuring out how we can come together to build with our respective resources. I didn't say come together to assimilate or integrate. I mean, come together like Mossad and the FBI and the CIA to figure out what our shared objectives are and how we can reach those goals together. Any immigrant who does not want Black Americans to be self-sufficient is an enemy, period. But our self-sufficiency should not be your destruction, immigrants, unless we have a parasitic relationship. And yes, the U.S. government did collude with corporations to replace ADOS with immigrants. But now, how can we use that to our advantage? How can we use the treachery of the U.S. government against Black people to our advantage? Immigrants, if you want to partner with Black Americans, the relationship has to be symbiotic and not parasitic or exploitative. We both have to benefit from whatever it is that we're doing together or separately. So again, I really implore everyone, especially content creators, turn the temperature down. Step back, regroup, and do not let the algorithm turn you into an agent for the same government who destroyed our communities. Immigrants are pawns just like we are. Immigrants, if Black Americans can't trust you, we're always going to have a problem. If we know that you're willing to sacrifice us for your personal gain, we will not be able to work together. If you want to form a coalition with us, you need to stop trying to artificially inseminate yourself into American society by cosplaying as Black Americans. Start sharing your knowledge and resources with us instead of coveting our position as Joseph in the land of Egypt. We all come from rich cultures. We all have talent. We all are intelligent. We're all resourceful. But can we build together? What good is all those resources and assets and abilities if we cannot use them to build together? If we're not talking about forming coalitions and building together while preserving our identity, we can build together while still maintaining our cultural identity, right? If we don't do that, I promise you, the CIA, the FBI, and other intelligence agencies will exploit the division between us as they have in the past, and they were never held accountable for it. They were never held accountable for destroying the Black Panther Party. They were never held accountable for poisoning our people with drugs. Nobody was held accountable. So, at the very least, what we can do is prevent them from doing this again. We have to stop this in its tracks before it gets out of hand. Yes, I understand that both sides have grievances toward each other. I really do. Now, I personally don't understand why immigrants will have smoke for Black Americans considering what's been going on. But I understand you were told that if you wanted to assimilate into white America, you had to pretty much denigrate and ostracize Black Americans. I understand that. But that was wrong, right? And you're acknowledging that. We're aware that that was just, more brainwashing, manipulation, division created by the government. So if we know what the government is trying to do, why are we helping them? If ADOS, immigrants and Black Americans, if we know what the government is trying to do, why are we helping them? Are we smart enough to stop the government in their tracks before anybody gets hurt? Before this turns into another civil war, okay? The way things are looking right now, it is very easy for an agent provocateur. I think there are already agents in this space, to be honest. It is very easy at this point for an agent provocateur to infiltrate the situation that we have going on and to create more dissension and violence. Very easy. It is very easy for that to happen because now the conversations are breeding ground for hatred. They're breeding ground for division. They're breeding ground for ad hominem attacks, right? And insults. We're not building or doing anything. Yes, delineation is important, but again, what are we building here? Nothing. All we're building is animosity, and we're building the case for the FBI and the CIA to infiltrate and do what they do. We know this. You should know this. And whoever is against this message is more than likely an agent. Trust and believe me. Or they're stupid as hell, or they're, again, a slave to the algorithm. They want to make money. And drama and chaos is, lucrative in the YouTube space, especially in the Black community. So we went from having the male versus female, old versus young, high value versus women, and now we have this ADOS immigrant. It's just constant dissension, and it's constant. It's never ending. So if we know this, we need to be proactive and step back and say, okay, we got to regroup. Let's take a breather here. Let's calm down and figure things out in a more productive and constructive way that would make it more difficult for our enemies watching us to exploit the situation for their benefit, okay? All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for listening. I look forward to your feedback. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll speak to you soon.